The largest state in the Union, Alaska boasts a wealth of natural resources, rich in oil, fish, minerals, and beautiful scenery. When the United States bought Alaska from Russia in 1867, though, many people on both sides were left scratching their heads. Why? Here's a look at the real reason Russia sold Alaska to the United States. In 1741, Vitus Bering crossed the straits from Russia to Alaska, opening up a wealth of opportunities for industrious hunters and entrepreneurs. One problem: Alaska was already inhabited by a native population that wasn't exactly thrilled by the Russian invasion. Tensions finally reached a breaking point in 1802 when the Tlingit people rose up and attacked a Russian outpost, leading to 2 years of warfare. That was just one of the problems that faced the Russian-American Company, which was formed to exploit Alaskan resources. At first, the company thrived thanks to the leadership of Alexander Baranov. He was on more or less friendly terms with native tribes, which helped the company become wildly profitable. But when he retired, the company was taken over by the Russian military, and things went quickly downhill. In an attempt to raise profits, they slashed the price they paid for pelts and furs. Desperate trappers ended up overhunting in an attempt to make up the lost wages, which in turn led to the drastic decline of the otter population, which led to the complete collapse of the Alaskan fur trade. And without profits from the fur trade, the whole endeavor suddenly began to make a lot less financial sense for the Russian government. It was also just really hard to survive in Alaska. In such an unforgiving climate, the Russians struggled to keep themselves fed, and with Moscow thousands of miles away, it became increasingly difficult to sustain the Russian outpost. So in 1811, the Russian-American Company decided to try somewhere new: California. Yes, it's true, the Russians set up a fort in California with the idea that they could grow food in the more temperate climate and ship it up to Alaska to keep things running. It sounded good in theory, but the outpost's farming efforts struggled. By 1839, they had also managed to kill off all the otters in that area too, so they decided just to give it up as a lost cause. The sparsely populated colonies also presented a logistical problem. How do you defend a territory as large as Alaska when there are only 800 people living there? It was pretty clear early on that Alaska was vulnerable, and Russia really wasn't equipped to protect it. That became a big problem in the 1850s thanks to the Crimean War, which saw Russia face off against France, Turkey, and Britain over control of access to religious places in the Holy Land. What exactly did that have to do with Alaska? Well, during the war, Russia's enemies controlled all of the sea routes, and the Russians were very rightly afraid that they would be cut off completely from their North American territory. By the end of the war, Russia had lost 500,000 troops and just didn't have the ability to properly defend Alaska. With British and American whaling ships already infringing on Russian territory, the Tsar feared that a potential gold rush could bring another wave of Americans that would overwhelm the small Russian outposts. Selling the place off was starting to sound like a good idea, and when you consider the fact that there actually was an Alaskan gold rush in 1897, maybe the Russians knew what they were doing. So why did Russia sell Alaska to the United States instead of to Canada? The answer is pretty simple. When Russia began seriously considering a sale in the late 1850s, Canada was still part of Britain, which of course Russia had just had a giant war with. Russia and America, on the other hand, were on pretty good terms, so from a diplomatic standpoint, it made sense to strengthen those bonds. Historian Susan Smith Peter told the New York Times, "From the Russian point of view, the deal made a lot of sense. They could irritate Britain and they could have a closer relationship with the United States. Still, things could have been different if not for a quirk in timing. Canada gained its independence in the summer of 1867, just a few short months after Russia had officially sold Alaska to the US. If Alaska was bad for the Russians, why on earth did the USA imagine that it would be good for the Americans? Part of it was the idea that there may indeed be gold up in them thar hills. But mostly it was manifest destiny, the idea that the United States was destined to expand to cover the whole continent, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Though many mocked Secretary of State William H. Seward for buying the distant frozen land, he said that he did it because America was destined to roll resistless waves to the ice barriers of the North and to encounter Oriental civilization on the shores of the Pacific. And he got a pretty darn good deal, purchasing Alaska for $7.2 million, or just 2 cents per acre. Though some derided the purchase as Seward's folly, he got the last laugh 30 years later when the Klondike Gold Rush sent 100,000 settlers to Alaska and brought $1 billion to the American economy. Meanwhile, Russia's collective "damn it" was heard round the world. 2020 hindsight is a pretty brilliant thing, isn't it? Even today, there are people in Russia who are still grumbling about the huge mistake that Tsar Alexander II made when he signed away the entire Alaskan territory for 2 cents an acre. In 2014, the Moscow Times wrote that there was a growing amount of generally facetious talk about taking back Alaska. and the 150th anniversary of the deal was noted in 2017 by many hardliners who felt the Tsar had sold out the nation. Sergei Aksyonov, the Prime Minister of Crimea, said, "If Russia was in possession of Alaska today, the geopolitical situation in the world would have been different." And he's right. If Russia still owned Alaska, they'd be the ones controlling all of the oil, mining, fisheries, and the state's other riches. And America would have no strategically placed military bases at the top of North America, and no claim to the Arctic at all, which means no real voice when it comes to addressing climate change-related problems like melting glaciers. But hey, that's not how it worked out, Russia. This is one literal Cold War you definitely can't win. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.